the heat to make sure they get the votes they need on some of these controversial picks.
Yeah, it's part of White House strategy. They expect some of these outside groups to start sort of spinning up in defense of Tulsi Gabbard, and also kind of as a warning to people who might oppose her. They view this as pass-fail for senators. You're with us on everybody, or you're against us on everybody. You don't get bonus points for voting for 70% of their nominees. But also, when I talked to a senior White House advisor, or excuse me, a senior White House official yesterday, made this point pretty clearly that Gabbard has to step up too. They want to see her essentially follow Pete Hegseth's playbook and fight harder for this job, show that she understands the seriousness of what she's being asked to do in top of these intel agencies. And hearing from both White House officials and Hill sources, there's a lot of expectation that this hearing will be very critical. If she gets to the hearing and gets to the floor, that's one thing. But if she stumbles in this hearing, she could be in serious trouble.
Well, Leanne, I thought it was fascinating that Senator Lindsey Graham said he's a will see.
Yeah.
He didn't say, I'm a yes. And he's one of the senators who's been most vocal about saying that President Trump deserves his picks to be in place. In fact, Senator Langford said he's a yes on Tulsi Gabbard. What are you hearing about the top concerns in her uphill battle?
Yes, as Garrett said, this hearing is going to be extremely critical. Not only the public part of the hearing, but remember, this is in front of the Intelligence Committee, so they are going to adjourn to go into a classified session. We will not have access to that, but that also is going to be extremely important for these senators. I have heard that some of her meetings with some senators have not gone particularly well, and there are a lot of concerns. And the senators we're looking out for are the ones who are most concerned with national security, where this is a top priority of theirs. And Lindsey Graham falls in that category.
Yeah, I mean, Carlos, it is fascinating. The national security concerns, the concerns over her two meetings with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, the dictator there. This is really becoming a bit of a loyalty test for Republicans in the Senate. What are you hearing?
Well, remember, Kristen, since the advent of the Tea Party, the greatest fear for any congressional Republican is a primary challenge. So this is a real problem for a lot of Republicans. However, there's another threat out there, which is the 2026 midterms, and some of these senators will have tough reelection fights. I know in the House, a lot of people are thinking about 2026 already. So the squeeze is on for Republicans. Sure, there's Trump loyalty, but there's also how viable are they in general elections? And Tulsi Gabbard, who I think will do well in terms of her temperament, the substance of her answers, that might be a different question because she's going to get some very tough questions. But this might be an opportunity for some Republican senators to distinguish themselves.
Yeah, actually, what are you expecting to see from Democrats? Because there's a big debate over whether Democrats were robust enough in their line of questioning to Pete Hegseth. Now, I've been talking to Democrats who say, yes, we were. This is Republican show. But what are you hearing in terms of what they're gearing up for this week?
Well, I mean, it's very clear that competency and character don't matter anymore, especially not when it comes to these nominees. I think that is what I mostly hear from Democrats is they're going to seize on those 2 points. As it relates to Tulsi Gabbard, I think that the concern there is that she's going to be in charge of our national securities, and there's all these questions about whether or not she's compromised. You can't have someone in charge of our national securities that is not beyond reproach, and when it comes to the questions of their loyalty to the country. So Democrats are going to seize on that opportunity and continue to drive that point. I also think it creates an opportunity for some Republicans that want to distinguish, to the Congressman's points, want to distinguish themselves from the president to say no to Gabbard, not only because of these questions, but because she's a former Democrat. I mean, all of these other issues that make it very easy to say no to.
I don't know that there's a huge appetite to break from President Trump right now among Republicans.
Like Senator Tillis and others that might want to.
Well, Tillis is another one who's in cycle. I mean, he's got two problems. He's going to have to not get primaried by like Michael Whatley, who Trump's been talking up recently, the RNC chair, and then he's got to run again if he survives a primary in a 50-50, state, a general election that would be extremely competitive. So Tillis is in a really tough spot, and he's someone, by the way, who this White House official who I spoke to yesterday indicated, if Tillis was trying to get a pocket veto on Pete Hegseth to basically get him out of the running without voting no, that's not how this is going to work. You're going to have to be willing to vote no on the floor, and that is a very that is a bridge too far, frankly, for some of these Republicans.
Lee, and a lot of people were on pins and needles, Republicans, the president. What was Tillis going to do? To Garrett's point, McConnell was a no vote. I got a text message from Steve Bannon, Trump ally, former Trump White House official, who said McConnell is going to face some repercussions for that, politically speaking. What do you make?
So
Garrett dismisses it, but talk about that box.
I dismiss that too. For McConnell specifically, he is in his last 2 years, most likely, of serving. He cares. He's one of those national security people who cares a lot about it. He's not worried about any sort of political repercussions. He is in his YOLO mode.
It's an image that I won't share.
But there are, and the thing here, so they can lose 3 Republicans. J.D. Vance can be the tiebreaker. The thing is, no one wants to be that, and you can find the 3: McConnell, Collins, Murkowski. No one wants to be that 4th that sinks a nominee. So it's going to be 3 or it's going to be 6.
Yeah, 7, 8. Yeah.
I mean, Matt Gaetz, after he was sunk, there was a thinking that can we cross him again? I mean, McConnell might be the only one in YOLO mode, in other words.
Look, at some point, some of these members are going to break with the president on some issue. I think the sooner they do it, probably the better. Kind of rip off the Band-Aid, figure out what that looks like, and also send a message to the president that he has to work with them, right? Because there's all these confirmations, but then there's also legislation, and specifically when they start working on tax reform, that's going to be a very messy
And
fight.
then who's going to remember 2 years from now how you voted on Tulsi Gabbard as a nominee, a former Democrat, right? Like, I don't know that many Republicans are going to hold that against you.
But actually, let me ask you, because there's going to be a lot of focus on RFK Jr. as well, for example, and the questioning there. And one of the big questions people have, will Democrats try to expose some of the divides between him on an issue like abortion, for example? Will they go there? What do you think?
Well, I mean, abortion's an interesting issue. It's somewhat nullified in this last election. You had Republican women voting for the reproductive rights and then voting for Donald Trump. I'm not so sure that that issue is as potent as we'd like for it to be going into this next cycle. But I don't project that or predict that folks would vote against RFK. I think he's going to sell.
So you think Gabbard's the one?
I think Gabbard's
who
the one.
has
And,
the most uphill battle.
and my advice to Democrats would be a hyper focus on her and make a national security issue. This is not about politics. This is about the security of our nation and our allies.
All right, guys, thank you